Professor, you have 2 kids.
Yes.
How old?
Let's see. My son, because there's this international or Korean age thing, my son was born in 2000 and my daughter was born in 2001.
2001, okay.
So they're all adults, young adults. My daughter will be graduating high school this year and start university. And my son is in his 3rd year of university.
So you went through the whole rite of education in Korea with them, I suppose?
I did. I kept them here. So.
What's your take on this? Was it enjoyable, right? To some extent, was it really as hard as people always tell me or tell us? Because we as foreigners, we always stand a little bit on the sideline and we hear
we
the
don't
story.
actually know, right?
Exactly.
That's why we're so curious to hear from.
So you talk to like Koreans and Korean parents and they tell you, hey, this is hell, but we kind of have to do it. Nobody really wants to do it, but it's like it's just set up like this way and we cannot change it.
That's true. It's the pressure that I can't explain it, but when my son came home in 3rd grade of elementary school saying he wanted to go to a math hagwon, I looked at him and I said, I can't help you. Because I knew that the pressure would be falling on me to make sure that he solves these problems or gets the work done. And I knew that my Korean ability would not be advanced enough to help him. And my husband's a pilot, so he's only home half of the week, not the full week, to help him. So this really makes it hard for me to support their education in many ways. So it was really frustrating because I didn't want to send them to hagwons. I really didn't. I was against the hagwon system, but they were very determined to go.
Because all their friends were going, right?
And they could see the score differences.
Okay.
In elementary school, he could see that he was falling behind. He was seeing that his friends were going to certain hagwons, getting test questions and practice questions that he didn't have. And they weren't in the books that he could buy at the store.
Right.
So he was suddenly like, there's something happening at these hagwons, and I need to get in on that. And so, I let him enroll and stuff. And it was really hard the first year helping him do his homework and figuring things out because, he would ask me and I didn't know it's all in Korean and like, how do you solve these problems?
So usually do parents support their children actively?
They do. In elementary school, you're almost expected to help your child with all the homework and, it was really hard to try to figure out, like they would say you have to do like draw a plant and they would have a plant name or find a plant and they would have the plant name in Korean and, I wouldn't know what the plant is and I would try to find it and then, I'd run around my neighborhood asking my friends, I was like, what is this? Tell me the name. And I was very lucky to have a good supportive neighborhood of ajumas and moms that always took care of my son. They were like, he has this, and they would bring him into the group, or my daughter, they would, and I think it was easier for my son to get into the groups. I think it's more exclusive for girls because if you have a daughter, you have to be an active mom to get in on that group. But for sons, like the moms are less involved, but for girls and daughters, I think the moms are very tight-knit. So it was harder for me to get my daughter involved in some of the group work, group team activities.
What do you mean for group work?
Like for schools or, private groups when we're joining, like if you're doing after-school project and the girls are getting together, the moms would form the groups with their children in the classroom. But you'd have to be a part of that mom group to get your daughter into that group. But the boys were more like, let's just do it ourselves. Whereas the girls were more, the moms took advantage of their friendships and they worked together. So it was harder to get my daughter involved.
It's a lot of work for parents as well.
Yeah, you have
mostly
to be
for moms,
active.
right?
Yes. So I was fortunate, my husband took on those roles and called the moms and, he would ask like, so can my daughter join your ballet team? And so a lot of these after school hagwons also have this private, you have to have a team of 5 to join this hagwon. So if you don't have 5 people, you can't join by yourself. So some of the classes were private, but it was run by a hagwon. But you have to have your team of 5. And, my daughter was always like, I want to go to that hagwon because my friends are going. And I said, I can't get you into that group of 5. They already have a group of 5. So it was really hard for her.
That's the first time I hear these kind of things.
I just heard about that, but as a foreigner, I didn't know if it was true or not. So did your son and daughter went to go to Hagwons at the
Yeah,
end?
yes, they did go to Hagwons. We had a very strict rule about this. We put a cap on how much money they could spend,
Per month.
and it had to be their decisions. And also, they had to find out about the Hagwons. And then my husband, when he was home, he would go to the different Hagwons and visit.
Just check.
But they had to pick their names, find them themselves, because it wasn't. If it was on me, it was much harder for me to
Right.
find that information for the kids.
And
I was just about to say, it's not only a time question, it's also a money question to some extent, right?
Yeah, it's really expensive. And if you have 2 kids, it's times 2.
Yeah.
And if you have 3 kids, it's really hard to even enroll. The benefit of having 3 kids, if they're close in age, is that you can, bargain. Like I've
Right.
got 3 in this
so
one hub.
please,
But or you can create your own group because 3 kids equal a group.
Right.
But when you have 2 kids and you've got a single income and you're trying to figure things out, I think it gets really expensive, and that's why we had to put a budget on our
Right.
children.
is it about like $1,000 per Hagwon per month?
It depends on the
depends,
kind of
right.
Hagwon and the grade levels. Like, what are they teaching? So in elementary school, you send them to a lot of Hagwons, but the price is not that expensive. But as you go up, like in high school, my son's science Hagwon would be just once a week, but that was almost 600,000 won.
Wow.
For those 4 hours. And
$500.
yeah, it's a lot of money, and you can afford to put them in 2, and you're already spending $1,000 on Hagwons.
So elementary school, you have Hagwons. Middle school, you have Hagwons.
Of course, you all.
And
High school, you have Hagwons. And university, you have Hagwons.
Man, not even elementary school. You start from kindergarten.
Preschool, yeah.
Preschool Hagwon.
Yeah.
Even before, even when you are like your kid is like 1 year old, you have teachers coming to your place and teaching you stuff.
Yeah, so they're called the Haksupjis, or
Yeah.
the workbook teachers. They come and they'll sing songs and teach your children
Right.
Korean or English or math. And that's what you were saying, the 3 basic subject areas.
I mean, we have daycare, stuff like this in Germany too. To my knowledge, you can send, almost newborn babies to daycare, and the kindergarten starts when you're 3, I think. We have that system too, but it's just
No, it's totally different from daycare.
Feels so
man.
different.
It's
totally
very
different.
academic focused and achievement focused, because parents want to see immediate results. So there's a lot of pressure on these teachers that have to show that your daughter has progressed.
Right.
And this concept of Hagwons is slowly expanding into the U.S. I saw Kumon. If you've heard of Kumon, is this repetitive way of learning. And if you look at any of their workbooks, it's really interesting because they're doing the same math problems over and over again. And what's really interesting is my daughter would figure out that this one question was repeated like 6 times in the workbook. So she'll answer it once and then find it 6 times in the workbook and just write the answer in. But these Hagwons are now showing up in the U.S. too. And Korean parents in the U.S. are...
Do you think it was good for your kids to go to Hagwon or not?
There were advantages, definitely advantages in ways where, there were certain aspects of the English language that I could never teach them, which was the translation, grammatical structures that were on these exams.
Right.
And there were specific answers the Korean teachers were looking for that weren't necessarily correct, but that was the answer. And this was probably the hardest part for my children, because their instincts of English, their native speaker instincts is what we'll call them, but they would say, oh, sounds wrong. It doesn't feel right.
Right.
And he would run home and say, Mom, is this right? Is this right? And I'm like, oh, no, we would never say that.
Right.
And then he'd be really upset because he knew it was the right answer, but he got marked wrong for it. And I would have to tell him he's got 2 choices. I will go and argue the grade, go to school and fight the teacher, or you will learn to memorize the right answer for the test and the natural answer for real life. And he just looked at me and I said, make a choice. And he goes, I'll just memorize both. And he didn't want me to go and say anything to the teacher, because he knew that would again cause trouble in education.
The opinion I have on, I also have a kid now, so I of course
Congratulations.
is international age is almost 4 years old. So anyway, I will have to face the Korean education system. My opinion about Hagwon is like, because in Italy we don't go to Hagwon, so I used to go to school 4 hours per day. That's it.
Wow.
So primary school until high school, my opinion is like, and then I worked in a big company with Koreans, and they all went to Hagwon. They studied everything, piano, this and that. So my opinion is, at the end of the day, our level was the same. I didn't put that much effort. I mean, of course, I studied hard, but in talking about time, I was just studying 4 hours per day, and then I was doing other things like playing soccer, going fishing, or this and playing guitar. And when we were like 25 years old, the level was the same. Yeah. I was able to do, math, this and that. So I think going to Hagwon doesn't make you smarter. But the good thing about Hagwon is, on average, the Korean population is so educated. Yeah. And that's great. One reason why Korea is so safe is because the population is so educated. So I think putting all this focus on education and going to Hagwon and this is not good for the single person, because at the end you are like the same level as foreigners, but is so good for the community. Yeah. That's my idea. What do you think?
I agree with you in many ways. I at first I was against this idea of Hagwons, but I thought that it really did teach my children discipline. It gave them responsibility of their own schedules, and it taught them how to study, something that you don't really learn in school. And it's a really interesting concept that they were taught how to study, how to pass the test, and they were given practicing so they felt comfortable in front of a test. And I feel like, schools don't really give these things enough practice to students. If you're going to test your student, then you have to teach them to get comfortable with the test, or know what to expect on a test, and strategies to pass. And I think Hagwons do that really well with like right around the test time, they sit you down and they give you all the strategies. This is how you take the test. This is how you pass. And these are the types of questions. And this is how you deal with those questions. And when the test isn't there, just regularly, they're learning how to study, what's important, what to memorize, and how to look at a book, how to look at a reading passage and take it apart and put it back together again. And I feel like those study skills are really valuable in life in general, and provide students with a really good foundation. I don't agree with the long hours. I don't agree with the excessiveness of it all. And that's why I put a cap with my children on what they wanted to learn, where they wanted to learn. And I think it always has to be the decision of the child. Right. At one point, when my son would be like, I'm done with this Hagwon, I want to move on to a different one, regardless of what other parents were saying, it's really important to just let them make that choice. And I think being in charge of their own education gives them, makes them very, I don't know what the word is. Responsible is what I keep thinking.
It's probably responsible.
Yeah, responsible. Yeah, right.
Yeah, something that I didn't get when I was studying in the U.S., I guess. And I felt like those are aspects of Korean education system that I think are really, I respect really and I think are valuable.
I mean, here's a view of someone who doesn't have any kids on the Hagwon system.
Yes, tell us.
Now, I'm really passionate about education as a whole, because I think personally education can solve a lot of problems around the world. If more people would be more educated in whatever way, there's a lot of different types of education, right?
You can make the world a better place.
You can, perfect words. You can make the world a better place. Now, the Hagwon system, I see 50-50. Yes, I agree with you that, hey, you can brush up your skills in a Hagwon and you can specialize in whatever you want to study. And sometimes you have to study more, I guess. I don't think it's bad if someone studies once or twice a week until like late hours.
Right.
But not every day. Yeah. Like if you're 13 or 14 years old and you have a day that starts at 7 and ends at 12 or even 1, 2 and study rooms, that just by logic, that cannot be good.
Yeah. I used to think that, and my son enlightened me that they don't just study in those Hagwons, they do have fun.
Right.
And I said, that's good to know. And I started to accept the fact that it was more of a social outlet as well. Right. For a lot of students that go to these Hagwons, they meet their friends, they develop friendships. And so it was beyond just the education. It was getting that support group going for you as well. And
if that's the case, yes.
But that's not for everybody. Definitely not for everybody. I think it's different. And I think, as a parent, that's our job to like instill those values of what's more important. Is it the Hagwon or is it his sleep? Is it the meal? And I remember a Hagwon teacher wanting to call my son at 2 a.m. every day to check to see if he answered the math question at 2 a.m.
2 a.m.
At 2 a.m. he would get a text and he'd have to text the teacher
That's
the
crazy.
answer
That's crazy.
It's too much.
to make sure that he was up studying those hours. And I had to put my foot down. I said, my son sleeps at 11 o'clock.
Of course, yeah.
I said, that's very important. And she's like, do you want him to go to college? I said, I do, but I want him to be healthy too.
Right.
And he will sleep at 11. You are not allowed to text my son after 11 p.m.
That's so important. That's so
And,
important.
you know, after a while, that idea from that teacher kind of faded away. And the text no longer came. And he didn't feel the pressure of having to
course.
stay up or wake up at 2 a.m. to answer that math question. And, you know, that's really important.
It's so important to teach kids the importance of education and the value of education, but it's so important also not to stress them.
That's right.